The case lands on the docket like a paperclip. Small, forgettable. A hydrant ticket. The courtroom runs on its ordinary noises. The air conditioner's steady breath, heels ticking across marble, a single cough that tries not to be heard. Fluorescents flatten the morning into office light. He rises when called. Dark green jacket, hair clipped short out of habit. Around 60. Shoulders still parade straight. The eyes have lost their map. On the file, Michael Donovan, U.S. Marine Corps, Ret. Judge Caprio turns a page, then looks up. Mr. Donovan, it appears you left your car in front of a fire hydrant. You know what that carries? Yes, sir. I do. The answer lands neat. No fray on it. I didn't see it. My wife was at the hospital. No embroidery, no reach for sympathy. The fatigue in his voice is the kind a person carries when words can't lift anything. In the benches, a couple of heads tilt. Everyone has a reason, someone thinks. Caprio studies him a beat longer. You're a veteran, correct? Yes, sir. 22 years. 3 tours Iraq, 1 Afghanistan. A short pause. The judge sets his pen down as if that detail asks for both hands. And what brought you here today? Not the fine, sir. Donovan keeps his chin level. I just didn't want anyone thinking I duck responsibility. The sentence settles heavier than the charge itself. The room's ordinary clatter thins. A clerk stops her pencil. Caprio nods once, slow. The hydrant, the citation, the posted sign, the tidy edges of municipal order, now look like the frame around something larger. He sees the discipline in the man's stance and the threadbare worry at the edges. 2 lives stitched together, military and civilian, not quite meeting in the seam. Let me look at your record, the judge says, voice gentler. He flips pages, paper whispers. Donovan's gaze fixes on nothing, the way men do when they've learned to stand still while storms pass through. Across the aisle, a bailiff shifts, and the air handler clicks louder for a moment. Small sounds define the space where pride and pain try to occupy the same square foot. Caprio returns his eyes to the man. The question that would fit this kind of case, why didn't you park somewhere else? Feels too small for the room as it now exists. Mr. Donovan, he says instead, we'll talk about what happened. All of it. The veteran nods once, grateful without showing it. The citation remains on the bench between them like a pebble that somehow started an avalanche. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Caprio softens his tone. Walk me through that morning, Mr. Donovan. He clears his throat. Ellen, my wife, was scheduled for valve surgery. Check-in at dawn. I dropped her at the entrance, circled once, twice. Every space was taken. The hydrant was open. I told myself I'd be 10 minutes. He blinks slow, as if replaying a tape only he can see. The surgeon came out sooner than I expected. I didn't want to be the man running from the parking lot if something went wrong. I left the car where it was and went in. The room hears the fluorescent buzz again, the tiny metronome of a clock over the clerk's desk. Donovan keeps his elbows close, hands stacked like he's holding a map that mustn't crease. I came back 20 minutes later. Ticket under the wiper. Red letters. He gives the ghost of a shrug. Yes, sir. My fault. You didn't contest it? Caprio asks. No, sir. The answer is immediate. I don't argue with the law. I've seen what life looks like when there isn't any. A small tremor passes through his fingers. He tucks his hands beneath the edge of the table to steady them. You served a long time. Yes, sir. Most of my adult life. He doesn't add adjectives. When I got back for good, the phone didn't ring much. The work I knew wasn't hiring. Kids have their own coasts. Ellen, she's the home that stayed. Caprio listens without notes. His eyes do the recording. I meant to pay the ticket, Donovan continues. I even set it by the coffee maker. But she had a setback. Back to the hospital, different ward. He lifts his gaze, not defensive, just tired. I missed the deadline. Then another notice came. The sound thins. I'm sorry, sir. No theatrics. The emotion arrives like weather. Undeniable, unperformed. Somewhere behind him, a spectator stops, fidgeting with a keychain. Caprio leans forward an inch. It sounds less like money and more like burden. Donovan's mouth tightens. Yes, sir. A beat. I was trained to carry my own pack. Asking for help feels like dropping it on someone else. The judge lets that live in the air. And Ellen, she's brave, he says, and the word is simple, unvarnished. Braver than I am some days. Silence gathers a measure of respect around the table. The bailiff, who's heard every excuse a city can produce, looks at the floor. Caprio's voice is quiet. We'll address the citation. But I want you to hear me. Responsibility doesn't exclude mercy. Donovan nods once, the movement small but real. The muscle at his jaw unclenches. He returns to parade stillness by habit, yet something in the posture has softened, as if the weight he refuses to drop has finally been seen. Caprio flips through the thin file again, his glasses sliding lower on the bridge of his nose. Mr. Donovan, he says carefully, your current citation is for parking in front of a hydrant, $100. But the record also shows 2 previous unpaid tickets in the same area. Do you recall those? Donovan's gaze drops. The motion is almost imperceptible, like someone bowing to memory. Yes, sir. I do now. Back then I didn't even realize I'd gotten them. The judge raises an eyebrow. How's that possible? I wasn't home much, he answers quietly. Most nights I slept in the car. The words settle in the room like dust after an explosion, soft, but unmistakable. A few people in the back row exchange glances, then stop, ashamed of the impulse to pity. Caprio doesn't interrupt. You were homeless? Not exactly. I still had the house, Donovan says, his fingers worrying the edge of the citation, turning it once, then again. I just couldn't walk through the door. Ellen was inside, hooked to machines, half the house full of those beeping sounds. I'd sit in the parking lot across the street because I couldn't stand hearing them slow down. The judge's pen stills above the paper. Donovan continues, his tone almost matter-of-fact. I'd tell myself I was giving her space to rest. Truth is, I was hiding from what I couldn't fix. I'd get coffee at the all-night diner, park near the hospital. If security didn't chase me off, I'd stay there till morning. The courtroom air shifts again. Even the hum of the vent sounds lower. Caprio leans forward. Mr. Donovan, that's not something a man should face alone. I know, sir. But asking for help, after the Corps, after seeing men lose everything in a blink, it's like unlearning how to breathe. You start believing pain's a private matter. His voice breaks, once, and he steadies it fast, the way soldiers do when they realize they've shown too much. When you've spent years giving orders and keeping people alive, you don't know what to do when the fight turns into waiting. It's worse than combat, sometimes. At least over there, you knew what the enemy looked like. He stops. The silence afterward isn't empty. It's heavy, reverent, like a church where someone just finished praying. Caprio's eyes hold him, steady, kind. And no one from Veterans Affairs checked in? They sent letters, Donovan says. Appointments, numbers to call. But I'd miss one, then another. After a while, I figured they had bigger fires to put out. The judge exhales slowly. You said before you thought strength meant handling it alone. Yes, sir. And now? Donovan's mouth curves into something that's not quite a smile. Now I think maybe strength's knowing when you can't. A ripple of breath moves through the courtroom, small but noticeable. The man in the second row, arms crossed since the start, uncrosses them. Caprio nods once, then speaks in the measured tone of someone building a bridge between law and compassion. Mr. Donovan, there's a reason this courtroom exists. It isn't to humiliate people. It's to remind them they're still seen. Donovan blinks, and for the first time that morning, his eyes lift fully to meet the judge's. I appreciate that, sir. You don't owe me gratitude, Caprio says softly. You've already paid your dues, in places far less forgiving than a city street. The veteran swallows, a quiet effort visible in the muscles of his neck. Maybe, but I let her down. That's what keeps me awake. Your wife. He nods. I was supposed to protect her from everything. Then one day, the enemy wasn't a man, it was her own heart. The judge doesn't speak right away. He lets the words breathe, lets the truth find its place. Outside the courtroom window, a siren wails faintly in the city distance. A sound that once meant mission, urgency, brotherhood. Now it's only another reminder of helplessness. Caprio sets his pen down. Mr. Donovan, he says finally, the tickets are minor. The hurt you're carrying is not. But I'll tell you something. Courage doesn't end when service does. It changes shape. Sometimes it looks like walking in here and telling the truth. The veteran nods, blinking hard. From the back of the room, someone clears their throat. No one dares move otherwise. The judge straightens his notes, but his tone softens one more shade. You're not alone in this city. Not in my courtroom. Donovan's reply comes low, almost inaudible. Thank you, sir. It's been a while since anyone said that. Caprio gives him a small, solemn nod. Then let that be your reminder. He taps the gavel once, just enough to close the moment without breaking it. And for a few breaths, even the courthouse feels like it's standing at attention. Caprio leans forward, elbows resting on the bench, his voice measured but weighted with intent. Mr. Donovan, he says, you're a Marine. You know discipline isn't only about action. It's also about accepting the consequences. But I also know war leaves scars no one can see. The words strike like distant thunder. Donovan sits perfectly still, yet something in his stillness breaks. His throat moves before sound finds it. You're right, sir, he says finally. We were trained to hold the line, to hold everything. And one day, I just couldn't even stand up. Caprio doesn't answer, just gives him the silence to fill. Donovan swallows, eyes fixed on the table's worn grain. I used to think it was just sleeplessness. Too much coffee, too many memories. Then one night, I woke up in the kitchen with a knife in my hand. No idea how I got there. He lets out a shaky laugh that isn't laughter. That's when I realized something was wrong. A ripple of unease passes through the spectators. The bailiff glances toward the judge, but Caprio gestures subtly, let him speak. I never went for help, Donovan says. Didn't want to be a burden. My unit had a guy once, good soldier, smart. Went to see a counselor after a rough patrol. After that, no one looked at him the same. We called him soft. Weak. He shakes his head. That word kills more men than bullets. The courtroom is so quiet now that the ticking of the wall clock sounds like a heartbeat. Caprio looks down at his folded hands, then back at Donovan. So you carried it alone? Yes, sir. Thought that's what strength meant. And now, Donovan exhales, long and heavy. His shoulders drop a fraction, the armor of habit beginning to slip. Now I don't know what it means anymore. Every morning feels like I'm still over there, waiting for something to go wrong. I keep telling myself it's over, but it never ends, sir. Not really. Caprio studies the man in front of him. The discipline's still intact, but the foundation underneath worn thin. Mr. Donovan, he says gently, you've been fighting for years without realizing you left the battlefield. The veteran's eyes lift slowly, moist but steady. Maybe I never wanted to leave it. At least there, I knew who I was. You're still that man, the judge says softly. But it takes more courage to face peace than war. Donovan nods once, then his voice cracks. I'm not scared of the fine, sir. Or the record. I'm scared of being alone. I come home, and the house feels like a bunker with no one left in it. The confession lands like a verdict. A woman in the second row wipes her eyes. Even the clerk, hardened by years of routine, lowers her gaze. Caprio's tone doesn't rise, but it fills the room. You are not alone here. What you've just said, that's the bravest thing you've done in a long time. Donovan stares down at his trembling hands. The years of command, of duty, of silence, all of it bends under the weight of those few simple words. I thought admitting fear meant losing control, he whispers. Caprio leans back, eyes steady. No, admitting fear means you're finally human again. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's charged, alive, the sound of a man rediscovering breath. Outside, through the tall windows, daylight catches the faint dust in the air, turning it to gold. Inside, the Marine who once carried the weight of war sits before a city judge, unarmed for the first time in his life, and somehow stronger for it. Caprio turns toward the uniformed officer sitting quietly in the back. Officer, he says, would you step forward, please? A young man rises, his movements careful. He stands before the bench, posture respectful but uneasy. You issued this citation? Caprio asks. Yes, Your Honor. His tone is even, but there's a faint shadow behind it. I remember that morning clearly. Tell us what you saw. The officer takes a breath. He was sitting in the driver's seat, engine off. I knocked on the window. He didn't move at first, just stared straight ahead. Not asleep, not drunk, just gone somewhere else. I wrote the ticket, placed it under the wiper, and he finally looked up. His eyes were. He pauses, searching for the right word. They looked like they were seeing something I couldn't. Caprio studies him. Did he argue? Say anything? No, sir. He just nodded once, stepped out of the car, and walked away. Didn't even glance at the ticket. The judge glances toward Donovan. That's true. Yes, sir, Donovan replies. I didn't have the energy to fight it. At that point, I thought life had already passed sentence on me. The judge's eyes soften. And yet here you are, choosing to stand before the law rather than hide from it. Before Donovan can answer, the officer clears his throat. Your Honor, if I may, there's something else. Caprio gestures for him to continue. A few weeks after that, I was assigned to a funeral detail, a veteran's service. It was pouring rain, the kind that soaks through your boots in seconds. And I saw him there. He nods toward Donovan, standing off by the fence. No umbrella, no coat. Just standing there, watching. The courtroom goes still. I didn't know who he was then. The officer continues, his voice quieter now. Later I realized it was his wife's funeral. He never approached anyone, never spoke. Just stood there until the service ended. Then he saluted once and left. Donovan's jaw tightens. His hands fold in his lap like he's trying to hold himself together. A long breath trembles out of him. Caprio leans back in his chair. The silence that follows is deep, respectful. You didn't even want to be seen grieving, he says finally. Because soldiers don't cry in public. Donovan's answer is barely audible. Old habits, sir. The judge lets the moment stretch, then turns to the officer. You said he seemed far away. Maybe he was still on duty, in another kind of battlefield. The officer nods slowly. That's how it looked to me. Caprio shifts his focus back to Donovan. I've spoken with the local Veterans Council, he says. They confirmed you've never once applied for benefits. Not for housing, not for counseling, not even medical support. Donovan doesn't look up. Others needed it more. The judge shakes his head. You've spent your life serving others, and still believe you don't deserve to be helped. That's not humility, Mr. Donovan. That's punishment. Something in the veteran breaks quietly. His composure, so precise till now, wavers. His eyes glisten, and when he speaks, the voice isn't the soldier's, just the man's. I don't remember the last time anyone said I deserved anything, sir. Caprio's voice lowers, soft as rain. You deserve peace. You've earned that much. The words land with the weight of truth. Donovan's lips part, but no sound comes. Tears finally spill, slow, reluctant, genuine. He doesn't hide them. Even the officer beside him blinks hard and looks away. A woman in the gallery reaches for a tissue. The air feels charged, fragile, like a wound finally exposed to light. Caprio folds his hands. Mr. Donovan, you are not here to be judged as a man who parked in the wrong spot. You're here as proof that strength can become isolation, and that sometimes the bravest act is surrendering to help. Donovan nods, unable to speak. The judge's gaze sweeps the room. Let this remind us, he says softly, that law without compassion is just paperwork. He turns back to Donovan, his final words firm but kind. Tomorrow morning, we'll conclude this case. But for tonight, I want you to rest. Truly rest. The veteran lifts his head, tears drying into lines that catch the courtroom's dull light. Yes, sir, he says, and the words sound different now. Less like duty, more like release. As the gavel falls, the entire room seems to exhale. Even justice, for once, feels human. The following morning, the courtroom fills again, quieter than before. The usual shuffle of papers and muted chatter feels out of place here, replaced by a calm expectancy. Light pours through the tall windows, laying soft stripes across the worn wooden floor. Judge Caprio enters, his robe catching the morning glow. He sits, glances down at his notes, and then at the man waiting before him. Donovan stands straighter today, not proud, not armored, simply present. Mr. Donovan, the judge begins, his tone deliberate but warm. I've reviewed everything. The facts are clear. You parked in front of a hydrant. By law, that carries a fine. But the law also recognizes something else. Context. He pauses, letting the words breathe. You came here today to take responsibility. What you gave this court, however, was something rarer, truth. Donovan listens in stillness, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. Your fine is dismissed, Caprio continues. Not because of your service, though that would be reason enough, but because justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about reflection, about courage that doesn't wear a uniform. A murmur ripples through the room, not disbelief but quiet agreement. Caprio's gaze stays on Donovan. Instead of payment, I asked something else. Tomorrow, I want you to visit the Providence Veterans Outreach Center. Spend a day with the younger men and women coming home from service. Tell them your story, not the medals, not the battles. Tell them about the night you finally asked for help. Show them that strength isn't silence. Donovan's voice catches. Yes, sir. With honor. The judge nods, satisfied. He reaches for a small envelope among his papers, its corners worn, a faded military seal stamped on the front. One more thing, he says. This arrived from the archives. It's from your unit. A letter of commendation, signed years ago by your commanding officer. They called you the calmest in the storm. He slides the envelope across the bench. I think that still fits. Donovan takes it with unsteady hands. He opens it halfway, sees the handwriting, and stops, as if the sight alone is too much. He lowers his head, shoulders trembling once, not with shame this time, but gratitude. The courtroom stands in a hush so complete that even the hum of the ceiling lights seems to fade. A few spectators rise to their feet. Others follow. It isn't applause, just presence, respect made visible. Caprio leans forward slightly. Mr. Donovan, he says quietly, the law isn't here to remind people of their failures. It's here to remind them they still matter. The veteran looks up, eyes wet but steady. Thank you, Your Honor, he says. I thought I'd run out of missions. Maybe you've just found a new one, the judge replies. Caprio lifts the gavel, taps it once, not sharply, but as a benediction. Case dismissed. Donovan nods, then turns toward the exit. The officer who once ticketed him gives a small salute. Donovan hesitates, returns it. Two men acknowledging each other without words. Outside, sunlight floods the courthouse steps. He pauses halfway down, lifts his face to it, blinking against the brightness. For the first time in years, he doesn't flinch. The city hums around him, ordinary, alive, and waiting. He folds the letter carefully, slips it into his jacket pocket, and walks on. Behind him, inside the now empty courtroom, Caprio gathers his papers and says softly, to no one in particular, but to everyone who's ever stood there. The law doesn't punish. It remembers. And outside, the veteran's silhouette moves through the light. No longer a soldier carrying the past, but a man finally stepping back into the world he once defended.